Okay, so up till now we have seen how SQL works, introduction to the various queries that are there, the constraints, the conditions that we can use, pattern matching, and the keys such as unique key, foreign key, not null, primary key, etc. Today, let's actually try and work that out in MySQL. So I have installed on my computer the SQL extension for use with VS Code. Now you can install it however you find comfortable on your own computers, and I have also installed it to be run on IDLE. So very soon we are going to have a video showing how we can connect MySQL and IDLE, so you can run Python code and IDLE at the same time. So let's start today's video by just opening up Visual Studio Code, and let's see how we can do the simple queries on it. Okay, so this is Visual Studio Code and this is my SQL prompt entry. So right now, like like I said, when you install SQL, if you want to check the databases that you have, you can do that by typing show databases semicolon and press enter. So this should show you all the databases that are there when you install SQL. So by default you get the 4 of these, or if you're on a different operating system you might get some other ones. These are the ones that I see on Mac. Okay, now that I see these databases, let's say that I want to create my own database. So let me create my own database by writing create database and then database name. So let me write sample db, and once I execute that it should show me one row affected, which just means that it executed successfully. Now once I create my database, let's say that I want to create a table in that database. Now if I was to directly write create table, it would not work because I first need to decide which database I'm using. So I need to write use sample db so the computer understands which database I'm referring to. Now that executed successfully, so I can create my table once again. So let me write create table, and for my table name let me write sample tb, and in this let's just have some random rows. So let me just start off by writing id integer, comma, let's have name var uh, 10, let's have a age column which is an integer once again, and let me execute this. So it says okay once again, so that means our command executed successfully. Let's see how our table looks like. So let's look at the structure of our table. So remember, to see the structure of the table that we have, we can either use the DESC or the describe query. So let me just write that here. So let me write DESC and sample TB, execute this. So now we can see that our sample TB has an integer column, sorry, an ID which is an integer column, a name which is a varchar, and an age which is also integer once again. So this shows you the basic structure of the table. Now let's say that I want to enter some data into this. So let me write insert into our table name which is sample TB values, and then let's have our first ID as 1, let's have Bob, and then let's have age as 20. So let me execute this. Let's add a couple of more values here as well so that we can perform some actions on it. Let's have 2, Rohan, and 30. Let's have one more. So insert into sample TB values, and this time let's say 10, Alia, and let's say 22. So now we have added all these three into our table sample TB. So let's look at what is saved in it. So remember, to see all the information that's there, we use the star character. So select star from sample TB and let's execute this. So now I can see all of the information that is stored in my sample TB column, table, sorry. Now, once I have all this information there, let's say that I want to select only the name of those people whose ID is less than 5. So the way we can do that is, since we talked about the between condition the first in our videos, let's look at how we can use between over here. So let's say I want to look at the IDs of all the names of all the people whose IDs are between 0 and 5. So let me write select name from sample TB. So remember the structure. Select column name from table name where condition. So select name from sample TB where, and now my condition is where ID between 0 and 5. So let me put in a semicolon and execute this. So now it shows me Bob and Rohan whose ID is 1, 2, which is between 0 and 5. Let's say now that I want to find the average of the ages of the people in my table. So this is going to be an aggregate function, and the name of that aggregate function, remember, is avg. So let me write select avg of age from, so my table name is sample tb semicolon, execute this. So the average age over here is 24.000 as I can see. Now let's say that we want to add a column to our table. So how would we do that? When we are adding a column, we are altering the structure of the table. So we would use the alter keyword. So let's say I want to add in a percentage column. So let me write this as alter table name, which is sample tb, add column, and I want to name the column as percent, and let's say it is a float, semicolon, execute this. So now if I was to go back and look at the structure of my table, it would now show me the percent column added here as well. Okay, now let's quickly add in some values here. So insert into sample tb values. But if I was to write or if I just want to insert the values for the percentage column, how would I do that? So let's look at this. So insert into sample tb, let me open my brackets and write here percent values, and let's say 35 or let's say 55.02, put in a semicolon and execute this. What do you think happened, or where do you think this value was inserted? So let's take a look at that. So select star from sample tb. Okay, so why was this inserted into a new why was this not inserted into one of these? Well, that's because I have already created this, and when I say insert into sample TB percentage column value 55.02, what the computer does is it creates a new line over there and adds it. If I wanted to add that for, let's say, Bob, let's say I wanted to assign Bob a percentage, the value or the way I would do that is I would write update sample TB set percent is equal to, let's say, 97.3, where ID is equal to 1. So now it says, okay, one row affected. Let's take a look at our table again. Now when I execute this, we can see that Bob has been assigned a percentage of 97.3. Okay, so this is how we can add columns, insert values to a particular column, update the values of certain columns. But just to remind you of a very important point when we are using aggregate functions, let's say I wanted to find the sum of all the ages of the people whose names I have put in here. So let me write select sum of age from sample TB and execute this. Now what happened was it did not consider the null value over here. Now in a similar way, if we look at count, so let's say select count of age from sample TB, what I would get is 3, because remember, count, like other aggregate functions, does not consider null. If however I was to write select count star from sample TB, I would see 4, because count star counts exactly the number of rows. It does not care what is contained in those rows. Okay, so this was some basic queries that we could perform in MySQL. Now in the next video we are going to look at how we can create primary keys, unique constraints, etc.